Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive with us?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be kind of digging into this AI story that's really got us both scratching our heads a bit.
Yeah,
It's about this Chinese startup called DeepSeek. And they're kind of shaking things up in the AI world.
definitely making some noise.
For sure. And to really get into it, we're going to be referencing this really insightful newsletter called One More Thing in AI by
Warnjit Phillip.
yes, Rajiv Phillip, exactly. He really dives deep into this whole David versus Goliath scenario, but instead of slingshots and all that, it's all about AI.
Algorithms, data, the whole shebang.
Right, exactly. And the thing that really got us hooked is how DeepSeek's doing all this incredible AI stuff, but on a budget that's, well, let's just say it's a lot smaller than what we're used to seeing from the big tech giants.
Yeah, that's the real head scratcher, right? I mean, we're so used to this idea that you need like billions of dollars to even play the game in AI.
Right. I mean, think about OpenAI, Google.
Yeah.
These guys are dropping billions.
Billions with a B.
Exactly. So how does a startup even think about competing in that arena?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question.
Well, and that's what makes this story so wild. They built this AI model, their R1 model, which is going toe-to-toe with, like, OpenAI's top models, but they did it for, get this, $5.6 million.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously, $5.6 million versus over a billion.
Hold on. So you're telling me they built something comparable to what these giants are doing, but for like a tiny, tiny fraction of the cost.
It's pretty mind-blowing, right? It's like I don't know, like finding out you can build a rocket ship for the price of a used car.
Okay, that's a crazy analogy, but I get it.
I know, right? But it kind of captures that sense of like, how is this even possible? But, it's not just about the cost, it's about the results they're getting. The newsletter actually shares this really cool example where an economist used R1 to, figure out the impact of Trump's 25% tariffs on the U.S. economy.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting choice of example.
Right. And get this, it crunched the numbers in like 12 seconds.
12 seconds. Come on. That's faster than I can order a pizza.
I know, right? But here's the kicker. Its findings lined up almost perfectly with what a major bank had estimated, using their super sophisticated models and teams of economists.
So, hold on. Let me get this straight. It's cheap, it's fast, and it's accurate. I mean, you got to wonder, why are the big guys spending billions if you can get these kind of results for so much less?
Right. That's the question, isn't it? Like, what does this mean for the future of AI if you don't need billions to be a player?
That's a huge question. I mean, if you don't need those massive resources, then suddenly the playing field opens up, right?
Right.
You could have all these innovators, small teams, even individuals who could potentially make a real impact.
Exactly. And that's where DeepSeek's, their whole approach to this comes in, The fact that their model is open source, it's like they're throwing open the doors and saying, hey, everyone, come on in, let's build the future of AI together.
Which is like the complete opposite of what we're seeing from some of those big tech companies, right?
Yeah.
They're keeping their models super secret under lock and key.
Exactly. It's like they're building these walled gardens of AI and, only a select few get to play inside.
And with DeepSeek, it's like they're building a public park, right? Everyone's welcome. You can use the swings, the slides. You can even build your own Cree house.
I love that analogy. It really captures that sense of openness and possibility that comes with this kind of approach.
Right. So we've got these two very different models, both figuratively and literally. You've got the closed proprietary model, and then you've got the open source collaborative model.
And the big question is, which one is going to lead to a better future for AI?
Yeah, and there are some really strong arguments on both sides, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the big arguments for keeping these AI models closed is safety and control, right? The thinking is if fewer people have access to this powerful tech, then there's less chance of it being misused.
That's a valid point, for sure. But then there's the argument that, with open source, you get more transparency, right? More eyes on the code, more people able to spot potential problems, biases, all of that.
That's a good point. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? Control versus transparency.
And honestly, there's no easy answer. It's a debate that's going to continue as AI gets more and more powerful.
Absolutely. But one thing's for sure, DeepSeek's decision to go open source, it's definitely shaking things up, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a huge disruption. I mean, it has the potential to democratize AI, make it accessible to so many more people, and who knows what kind of breakthroughs that could lead to.
Right. Imagine small businesses, researchers, even individual developers suddenly having these incredibly powerful tools at their fingertips.
The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, so We've established that DeepSeek is doing things differently and getting some pretty incredible results. But how are they pulling this off? Like, what's their secret sauce? What's different about their approach to actually building AI?
Well, their approach is just as unconventional as their budget.
Oh, yeah, the hiring strategy. They only hired recent grads, right?
Yep. No seasoned engineers, just fresh out of college.
That seems so risky.
It does, doesn't it? But DeepSeek's founder, he had this belief that, recent grads, they don't have years of traditional thinking ingrained in them, so they'd be more likely to come up with those outside-the-box solutions.
So they were specifically looking for people who could challenge the status quo.
Exactly.
Wow. So what else did they do differently?
Well, instead of relying on brute force computing power, which is what a lot of the big players do, they focused on being super efficient with their resources. They figured out ways to reduce the amount of data needed to train their AI, and they used some clever programming tricks to get the most out of their hardware.
Ah, so it's like they're building a race car that's just as fast as the competition, but with a much smaller engine.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, so they're working smarter, not harder. But what about this distillation technique I read about?
Uh-huh.
How did that play into their strategy?
Oh, that's a cool one. Imagine you could spend an afternoon picking Einstein's brain about physics.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but how does that relate to AI?
Well, think of it this way. Instead of building their AI from scratch, they basically learn from the best, using those existing models as their Einstein.
So they basically downloaded Einstein's brain into their system.
In a way, yeah, they bombarded those existing models with tons of questions, essentially extracting their core knowledge and then compressing it into their own model.
So it's like a super efficient way to learn.
Exactly. Way faster and cheaper than starting from zero.
That's so clever.
Hmm.
No wonder they were able to do it all for a fraction of the cost. But wait, there's more, right? They also made some big improvements to this thing called mixture of experts, didn't they?
They did. Mixture of experts, or MOE. It's a way to build AI that's incredibly efficient and can handle increasingly complex tasks. It's like having a whole team of specialized experts instead of one generalist trying to do everything.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy.
Yeah.
So instead of one giant AI trying to handle everything, they divided it up into smaller networks, each focusing on a specific task. Kind of like instead of going to a general practitioner for everything, you have access to brain surgeons, cardiologists, all sorts of specialists.
You got it. Each expert handles a particular task or area of knowledge. That way, the AI only uses the computing power it needs for each specific job.
So it's like having the right tool for the right job
Hmm.
instead of one giant clunky tool that's supposed to do everything.
Perfect analogy.
So DeepSeek didn't just use this MOE technique, they actually made it even better, right? What kind of enhancements did they come up with?
Well, they really honed in on three key areas: memory efficiency, quantization, and optimized GPU connections. And let's break those down one by one.
This is good.
Okay, so first, memory efficiency. You got to remember, these AI models, they have to store massive amounts of data while they're processing information. So DeepSeek, they developed this technique called multi-head latent attention. It's a mouthful, I know.
Multi-head what?
I know, right? But basically, it helps to compress all that data, making it more manageable.
So it's like they taught their AI to think more efficiently, like mental decluttering for artificial intelligence.
Exactly. And that had a huge impact on speed because it allowed data to move between the chips much faster. And then there's quantization.
Quanti what now?
Quantization, it's a little technical, but basically they found a way to use less memory to store the same amount of information.
So like figuring out how to pack twice as many clothes in your suitcase without buying a bigger suitcase.
Exactly. More with less. That's the name of the game.
Okay, starting to see a pattern here. Shortcuts, efficiencies, clever tricks.
Absolutely. Resourcefulness at its finest.
So what about those optimized GPU connections? How do they squeeze more performance out of their hardware?
Well, when you're training AI, it's not just about raw power. It's also about how quickly data can flow between all those chips. DeepSeek found ways to optimize how their 2048 GPUs were talking to each other, creating this super efficient data highway. Think of it like, imagine you're trying to get to a concert and there's a massive traffic jam. DeepSeek found a way to create express lanes, getting everyone to their destination much faster.
They're like traffic engineers for AI data.
That's a good way to put it.
So it sounds like they really were playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. They outsmarted the competition by being more efficient, more creative, more resourceful.
And they did all of this while also dealing with another pretty big hurdle: the U.S. chip blockade.
Oh, right. The U.S. government's attempt to to limit China's access to those high-end AI chips. How did they manage to navigate that obstacle?
Well, they found a loophole they could exploit. You see, NVIDIA, the big name in AI chips, they still wanted to do business in China, right? So they designed a slightly weaker chip specifically for that market.
Weaker, but obviously still powerful enough to build an amazing AI.
Exactly. And experts think DeepSeek might have bought a huge stash of these chips before the US, really tightened the restrictions.
So they stockpiled.
There's even some speculation that they might have stockpiled those really powerful chips before the ban fully went into effect.
Wow, so they outsmarted not only the tech giants, but also the U.S. government.
It seems that way.
That's pretty impressive. What does this whole situation say about using export controls to try to, contain AI development?
It definitely raises some big questions, doesn't it? I mean, the U.S. has spent billions trying to slow down China's AI progress, but DeepSeek's success shows that it's not as simple as just cutting off access to hardware. When it comes to innovation, people find a way.
There's always a workaround, isn't there?
Almost always.
Okay, but let's get back to the tech for a second. How does DeepSeek's R1 actually stack up against OpenAI's O1 head-to-head? What are the key differences?
That's the big question everyone's asking, right? And luckily, the newsletter breaks it down pretty well. We should dive into a side-by-side comparison and see how these two AI powerhouses measure up. What do you think?
Let's do it. I'm really curious to see how they compare, especially given everything we've learned about DeepSeek's, unconventional approach. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so we've got these two AI heavyweights in the ring, DeepSeek's R1 and OpenAI's O1. They both can solve problems, figure things out. What are we seeing as their big strengths?
Well, they both really excel at this thing called reasoning and problem solving. It's really at the heart of what makes these AI models so powerful, you know?
So they can, analyze complex information,
Yeah.
understand the context, come up with creative solutions?
Exactly. It's almost like having, a super intelligent research assistant who can just sift through mountains of data and give you these amazing insights.
So that's how they're both similar.
Yeah, at least from what we know so far, they seem pretty similar in terms of raw brain power, but there are some key differences in how they, how they approach those tasks and how transparent they are about their process.
Okay, so let's talk about that transparency thing. DeepSeek, they're all about open source, right? But how does that actually play out in their AI model?
Right. Well, both R1 and O1, they use this thing called chain of thought logic, which basically means they break down their reasoning into steps, kind of like a detective would solve a case.
Oh, okay.
But here's the difference. DeepSeek's R1, it actually shows you those steps. You can see exactly how it arrived at its conclusions.
Wow. So it's like having a window into the AI's thought process. Does OpenAI's O1 do that?
Not quite. While O1, it also uses that chain of thought reasoning. It doesn't reveal its internal workings in the same way.
It's kind of black box then.
A little bit, yeah. It gives you the answer,
Yeah.
but not the step-by-step breakdown. So it's more like a magic trick.
Yeah.
You see the amazing outcome, but you have no idea how the magician actually pulled it off.
So DeepSeek's like the open book test, and OpenAI's like the closed book.
Pretty much.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So DeepSeek definitely wins the transparency award, but how about performance? Like which one's actually better at solving problems and getting results?
Well, it's honestly a pretty close race. OpenAI's O1, it still has an edge in some areas, especially tasks that require specialized knowledge or, those really complex calculations.
Okay.
But DeepSeek's R1, it's catching up fast, and it's already outperforming, some of those older models like O1 Mini.
So it's like watching a rookie athlete quickly closing the gap on a seasoned pro.
Exactly.
That's pretty exciting. And I mean, given how much more cost-efficient DeepSeek's model is, I imagine that gives them a huge advantage when it comes to further development and improvements, right? They can experiment more, refine their model faster.
Absolutely. They can, they can iterate much faster than companies that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on each training cycle. It's like they're running laps around the competition.
So they can try more things more quickly and for less money.
Exactly. That speed of innovation, it's really evident in their progress so far. I mean, R1 is still relatively new, but it's already, making waves and challenging those big established players.
It's a classic underdog story.
Absolutely, but with algorithms and data instead of muscles and sweat.
Okay, speaking of underdogs, let's talk about that cost difference again.
Right.
I mean, we know DeepSeek built R1 for a tiny fraction of what OpenAI spent, but how does that translate to the real world? Like, how does that affect, the accessibility and the future of AI?
Right. Well, it's honestly a game changer. Think about it. DeepSeek's R1, it was trained on roughly $5 million worth of chips. Compare that to like the estimated cost of training GPT-4, which is the engine behind O1, which is over $100 million.
Oh,
And projections for GPT-5, they're even crazier, exceeding 500 million.
okay. Those are like Hollywood blockbuster numbers.
Exactly. It's like comparing the budget of a small indie film to a massive summer tentpole movie.
I can't even wrap my head around those numbers. No wonder DeepSeek is turning heads in the industry. But I'm guessing it's not just about those initial development costs, right?
Mhm.
What about like the ongoing expenses of actually running these AI models?
Oh, that's another area where DeepSeek's approach really shines. Their MOE system, remember? The one that divides tasks among those specialized submodels?
Yeah.
Well, that significantly cuts down on the computing power needed to run the AI, which means lower operating costs, and that makes the technology much more accessible to a wider range of users.
And you can't forget that DeepSeek's model is open source, right?
Mm.
So businesses can, customize it, host it themselves. They don't have to rely on OpenAI's infrastructure or pay their subscription fees.
Right, it's like the difference between renting a house and owning one outright.
So much more control and flexibility.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about, the advantages of DeepSeek's approach, but what about the potential downsides? I mean, they are based in China, so naturally there are concerns about censorship, data security, all of that. How do those issues, how do those factor into the comparison with OpenAI?
Well, it's definitely a complex question, and there are some trade-offs to consider.
Right.
On one hand, DeepSeek's open source model, it gives users the ability to download the code, modify it, really see how it works.
Okay.
That level of transparency and control, you just don't get that with OpenAI's closed system.
But with DeepSeek, there's that censorship issue, right?
Right. DeepSeek does censor certain topics, things related to China, which, it does raise concerns about potential biases, limits on free expression.
And OpenAI.
OpenAI, on the other hand, they have, a strict no censorship policy. But they also have complete control over their model, so users have no way of knowing how their data is being used, what safeguards are in place.
So it's a trade-off, really, transparency versus control.
Exactly. With DeepSeek, you can see more of how the AI works, but you got to trust that they're handling sensitive data responsibly.
And with OpenAI, you're basically putting your faith in their internal policies, hoping they're doing the right thing.
Right.
It's a tough choice, and it really depends on, individual priorities and risk tolerance.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, DeepSeek's open source approach, it's a major disruption to the industry. It's a completely different way of thinking about how we develop and use AI.
And it's definitely having a real impact. The newsletter mentions that the DeepSeek R1 app, it's one of the top downloads on the U.S. App Store.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear sign that it's gaining traction quickly. People are curious, they're excited about this technology.
And OpenAI is feeling the heat, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're facing competition from these open source models like DeepSeek. Their dominance in the enterprise AI market, it's being challenged, and they're having to adjust their pricing to stay competitive.
It's like the old guard suddenly realizing they need to step up their game.
It's a classic example of disruptive innovation, right? You have a smaller, more agile company that comes in with a new approach, undercuts those big players on cost and flexibility.
And the big guys, they have to adapt or risk being left behind.
Right. It's like that story of the nimble startup disrupting the slow-moving giant, but in the world of AI.
It's amazing how quickly things can change, even in a field as advanced and fast-paced as AI. But DeepSeek's success, it goes beyond just challenging the status quo. They've kind of exposed some potential weaknesses in the U.S.'s attempts to maintain its technological edge.
Oh, for sure.
The fact that they were able to work around those export controls and build a world-class AI using chips that were supposed to be less powerful, that's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, it really makes you question whether trying to control AI development by just restricting hardware, it makes you wonder if that's really the right strategy in the long run.
People are clever, and innovation finds a way.
Absolutely. And DeepSeek's story is a perfect example of that. They didn't just build an amazing AI model. They also challenged some fundamental assumptions about about how AI is developed and who gets to be a part of this technological revolution.
It's inspiring.
It really is. It shows that even in a field dominated by giant corporations, there's still room for innovation, disruption, a different way of doing things. I
Mhm.
mean, DeepSeek's success, it raises some really important questions about the future of AI, right?
Yeah, like what kind of questions?
Well, will this open source model spark a new wave of innovation? Or will, concerns about control and safety lead us towards those closed systems? What do you think?
That's a really good question. It's something we all need to be thinking about, right? As AI continues to evolve and reshape our world.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this comparison, there was one more detail from the newsletter I wanted to touch on. It's about the operating costs of DeepSeek's R1 when it's run on Azure, Microsoft's cloud computing platform.
Oh yeah, yeah. That chart that shows how much more affordable DeepSeek's model is compared to the competition.
Yeah, yeah. It really highlights their focus on efficiency. Okay. Like innovation isn't just about creating something new, it's about making it accessible and affordable so more people can benefit from it.
I agree.
All right, so I think we've covered the main points of the comparison. Any final thoughts on all of this?
Well, DeepSeek's story has definitely given us a lot to think about. Their resourceful approach, combined with their commitment to open source development, it's really shaken up the AI industry, and it's raised some big questions about the future of this technology. The question that I keep coming back to is, will DeepSeek's success inspire a new generation of AI innovators, or will, the focus on control and profit lead to a more closed and centralized AI landscape? What do you think?
That's a great question, and a great question for our listeners to ponder. And if you're interested in exploring this story further, I highly recommend checking out Ranjit Phillips' One More Thing in AI newsletter. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to stay ahead of the curve in this rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. It makes you think about where this is all going. Like
Yeah.
what are the big forces that are shaping the future of AI, and how can we be part of that whole conversation?
Yeah. And DeepSeek's their journey, it's a really powerful reminder that innovation, it doesn't always, follow the expected path. It can come from these unexpected places.
Yeah.
Challenge those deeply held beliefs.
And totally reshape entire industries.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
DeepSeek, they had limited resources. They were up against like some serious competition, so they had to find a different way to succeed.
Right.
And in doing so, I mean, they may have actually stumbled onto a more sustainable, more accessible approach to AI development.
It's pretty amazing, right? Like by focusing on efficiency and creativity instead of just, throwing money at the problem.
Yeah.
They might have actually unlocked a whole new era of AI innovation.
And it's not just about the tech itself, right? It's also about the values that are built into that technology.
Oh, for sure.
DeepSeek's commitment to open source,
Mm.
their willingness to share their knowledge and empower others. That's a stark contrast to those closed proprietary models that we see from some of the bigger players.
Yeah, I mean, it really brings up those important questions about who controls AI, who benefits from it,
Right.
and how we can make sure that this incredibly powerful technology, it serves everyone,
Yeah.
not just a select few.
Those are some really big questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
No.
But I do think that DeepSeek's story, it gives us, reason to be hopeful.
It does.
It shows that even in a field that's dominated by these massive corporations, there's still room for fresh ideas, disruption, a different way of doing things.
It reminds us that the future of AI, it's not set in stone.
Right.
It's being shaped right now by the choices we make, by the values we prioritize.
And the stories we tell. Yeah. So to everyone listening out there, I think we want to leave you with this question. What role do you want to play in shaping the future of AI? Will you be a consumer, a creator, a challenger, a collaborator? I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
They are, and the choice is really yours.
It is.
And regardless of where you stand on these issues, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
Because the future of AI, it's too important to be left to just algorithms.
That's a perfect thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Absolutely.